this time of, I've been on a path for a long time of trying to study things and work things out, and inner and outer learning. But this week of Lent, not week of Lent, I keep thinking like week. No, it's 7 weeks, it's 40 days. Anyway, this time it makes it more focused. So maybe if we didn't have these points in the religious calendar, and of course if you're not following any faith or any sort of spiritual expansion or learning path or whatever you want to call it, this is not happening in your life. That I imagine there's no space allowed for this sort of contemplation, and coming to understand what it's all about and how it works and who's God and all that sort of a thing. So I've been coming to a thing of, because I like to get to the root of a thing, and I do think it helps to apply logic and being rational and history and evidence that we think that we know. We have people that, I don't suppose everybody that goes out as a scientist or archaeologist or whatever, they're all lying. They're finding evidence and they're trying to fathom it out. And of course we're then learning all that because of their work. So, but this is the time when Jesus is the man that lived that we call Jesus. I don't think he was called Jesus, but we'll call him Jesus. He was crucified. There seems to be evidence for that, aside from the fact that I just think, like, how is the guy around 2,000 years later and still, he only lived for supposedly 33 years, and it was only his ministry was, they don't know if it was one Passover or more, so whether it was a year or 3 years. I think it's far more likely it was 3 years if you track where he went and what he did geographically, and they're all on foot. Anyway, so I get right into the, as much as I can, the minutiae of things, and then it's like something is reminding me that that's good to have that knowledge and that understanding and do that exploration, but also, like, does it really matter? Does it really make a difference? Does it really? So with the resurrection, say, there's the biblical version and what the Christians believe, and then there's other stories that are that he didn't die. The Muslims, they don't believe that he died. He ascended, I believe. Then there's other evidence that I've heard. I use the word evidence. People have said, I just want to say, this is the thing. What are we meaning by the term resurrection and evidence? And yeah, so there's this other belief that he was given. In the Bible, it mentions hyssop and herbs and aloe was gathered. And if you're knowledgeable of the mystery school teachings and the mystery schools of eons ago, then they practiced a thing, and even people into modern day times, and I think someone like Isaac Newton was one of them, where they practice this thing where they're using some sort of herbs, I think it would be herbs, to take you into a state where I don't know whether you would use the medical term comatose. Well, you were comatose, but the medical term for coma, it was almost as if you were taken back to as close as being dead without being dead, and then revived. And I think this happened, actually, no coincidence, probably over 3 days. And you weren't just allowed to do this practice. You had to build up to it in the mystery schools. It wasn't just a sort of a gung ho and let you at it sort of a thing. So yeah, there's also people that talk about not just general people. I mean people that study this sort of thing. They say that the time from when the court was early in the morning, and then he was crucified by about 11 o'clock or something, and then so he only died six hours later. But they know from knowledge, well, they know from medical things that how long it would take people to die from, because it's the asphyxiation that your lungs get squashed and you can't breathe and you can't pull yourself up. So you kind of die by suffocation, I think, as I understand it, and that wouldn't have happened in that space of time, apparently, and that it was a Roman soldier who was sympathetic to Jesus, and so he put the spear in, and it showed the white coming out, because that's to do with this. Just every time I speak about this sort of thing, it just opens up this myriad of all these things. So there's red and white blood cells, and there's liquids, and anyway, there's a red one and a white one, and the white one came out, and that would suggest that he was dead. But actually you would get the same white liquid coming out if you punched it in a certain particular place. And so he wasn't completely dead, but as good as, and either because when they'd given him the stuff on the sponge, that maybe that was what was the stuff that puts you into this 3-day near-death coma thing. And so then they also had the herbs, so they took him to Joseph Arimathea's private cave, and apparently there was a back entrance, and some other people have got this evidence of this. These are all coming from bits and pieces that have been found, and different people working on this are linking this stuff all together. That's as I understand it. And so there was an entrance, so even though you had the Roman guards on the outside, there was some sort of back entrance somewhere, or tunnel or something, into this cave, and that they're calling it a cave, but it's not exactly a cave, I don't think, because it sounds like there was alterations made on this thing, but it wasn't a building as such. And so then they used the herbs to revive him. So yeah, this kind of blows the thing of Jesus actually dying and being resurrected, and then he was seen. I don't know, this is the sort of thing that, you know, when I've been learning and coming across all these sort of different versions of this same thing, and it's not just by different faiths, people would lump them into New Age. I don't think they are. They look more like sort of your university scholar type of people. They're not hippies with crystals dangling off them. Hey, they mean business. They're really, you know, studying their stuff, and they're putting it out in the world and putting their name to it. So and they're not nutters. They don't come across as nutters anyway. So yeah, it's a tricky thing, weighing it all up, and then it comes back to what is important. Well, if you're a Christian, it's incredibly important, because that is what you're hanging your hat on. That's the foundation of it. If the new evidence that is coming out, and I'm calling it evidence, maybe it's not evidence, but the new things that are coming to light in writings of old, does it affect, I suppose if you've been a church, Catholic or Anglican churches, Protestant churches, and that's the thing that you've wholly believed, it's kind of hard. It's as hard as it has been for like the archaeologists that have been very used to, just spending years and years arguing and debating over this and that, and they work on finding, digging stuff out of the ground. So now they're really struggling with the likes of Graham Hancock, Robert Bauval, the chap West, can't think of his first name, your Greg Bradens and all of them. They are struggling with how they are using evidence, because thanks to computers and this wonderful technology that has its downsides massively, trolling and kids seeing porn and, oh God, just disgusting stuff, we wouldn't be able to say trace back through the stars to find that the Orion's belt lines up with those 3 pyramids, or that when it was in the procession of Leo, this is the thing, they can track these processions that are thousands of years, and they just do it on a computer, and they can whiz northwest east of the sky. So computers are making it so easy for this to happen. If you want to be scientific, the stars, science is a study of nature. That should include the cosmos. It does. We have astronomy. And then there's astrology. But they're like, oh, astrology? Oh, that's a bit ancient civilization. What is wrong with ancient civilization? Well, that goes back to us really thinking, we all think of them as being incredibly primitive. I've always struggled with that, because I don't think it was just the odd one or two. I don't think they were in isolation. I think there were perfectly capable to have Einsteins and all that, back even in prehistory. Yeah, and just because we don't, so the archaeologists are looking for actual physical evidence. So they're poo-pooing anything that these other guys, new modern guys, are saying that are contradicting. Also, it's an ego thing, isn't it? They've probably written textbooks and stuff on this, and they don't want to be losing. It would be losing face, but surely it's not losing face, because stuff moves on and we now have computers, and so guys can come in with fresh minds, and thank God they do, to be able to look at this whole situation differently. I'd like to think that if I was one of those archaeologists, I would have gone, do you know what, nobody likes change, but these guys are probably onto something here. I should jump ship and show myself to be the bigger man, and not be bum fighting. And crikey, you hear people like Graham Hancock talking, and Robert Bauval, and they're talking about the fact that it's literally knives at dawn. Not on the Hancock side, but on the archaeologist side. You think they'd be quite civilised and quite, I don't know, modest little academics. No, 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 massive egos, and they're just going nuts because for years now they've just really not just disagreed, but outright tried to make these guys look like massive idiots and just be completely discredited. And yeah, it's crazy to watch that sort of behaviour in grown-ups. I remember when I was younger, and I was always taught, I was of the generation still where you were taught to respect your elders. And then as you got a bit older, you're thinking, bloody hell, look at that grown person that's like a lot older than me, and look how they're behaving. And it really started to make me question that sort of I'm still very conditioned in that way. But yeah, you think, wow, look at that. So yeah, you just see people behaving badly all over the place, don't you? It's amazing. Have we progressed? Have we gone backwards? Well. So yeah, I'm looking at what's really important and getting to the root of a thing. I will never stop this path of learning, I don't think, because it just absolutely fascinates me. But it is this Lent time, I'm finding especially, is remembering to go inwards and see what answers can be found in there. So there's the resurrection, but also there's like the thing of I've been convinced for a long time that Jesus didn't want to be worshipped. I'm not sure he wanted to be the head of any sort of a church. From my understandings, the sort of gatherings that he would have would be far more like the Quakers' practice, where, and again, I really must go to a Quaker meeting. As I understand it, they spend a lot more time in silence. They do have some people speaking, but there's no service as such. There's no rituals. There's no, I suppose their ritual is sitting and listening. I don't know if they would call it sitting in prayer, but they're certainly sitting and listening. And I know that at Quaker funerals, they're held in silence. And if you feel moved by spirit to stand up and speak, then you will. So they're much more contemplative, I would say, or maybe they're not contemplating, because that suggests there's active going on, but they're just sitting, and I don't think it's meditation, maybe not as we now know it as a modern thing, but it's all on a bit of that. And yeah, I think it's, from what I understand, it's just sitting and being and allowing that space again for connection with spirit, with the bigger mystery of it all. So I'm not committing myself to sort of the path of being a nun, but there is always for me this aspect of discipline and treading on this spiritual path, you know, or being spiritual or becoming spiritual, or how all these terms that people use. I think it's a great thing that there's lots of people doing it, but going to a yoga class or getting a meditation app on your phone or lighting incense or having some crystals in your house, there's a lot more to that, and a lot of it is about doing the work on the self. having an awareness, looking at where you are in your life and who you are in the world. So as much as what is called doing the work on the self, it is really also about that. And I'm not necessarily always meditating or in some sort of deep prayer, but in a sense of living a life in prayer where I have an awareness and not constant, because your day might, everyone's days is clogged up with, you have to do work tasks and family tasks and putting petrol in your car and concentrating on that and concentrating on shopping. But there is a sense for me that I'm always in some sort of connection with God. There's something other, there's something greater than each of us. And how I'm moving around in the world and what I'm doing and how I'm showing up for others and for good purpose, for the benefit of others. I don't mean in a goody sort of two shoes, all out, going and volunteering and do it. I mean, just in the very small, very simple things. The simple things of just being human and being around other people in your family situations, your work, your friendships, out in town when you're, or wherever where you're meeting strangers. Just very simple, simplistic, the basic of being a decent human being out in the world, not monumental spiritual growth, and reaching enlightenment or whatever, taking it back to a very simple form. And this, even that, it's a growth in consciousness, I think, than, say, being someone that is completely unaware and self-centered and ego-minded and material world driven, as a comparison. Thing that I was also thinking about earlier, I've been thinking about this for a little while, is this thing of oneness, that we're all of one being. So in the biblical sense, we've all come from Adam, and certainly it would suggest in genealogy now that actually that is the case, and they can place where Adam came from in Africa, and the spread up through what they've learned now through genetics is just like, amazing. So this thing of all being one, and there's also the aspect of non-duality. So, but again, it's this sort of, it's a concept, it's a thing you can't quite get hold of. It's something what are people, is everyone that's saying that, are they all meaning the same thing? And what will it actually look like? How will that actually work? So something it's made me think about is actually we are, however this has come to be, and whether we live a million times or whether we've come from somewhere else or whatever, we're a soul and a body, whatever the thing is, there's a load of human beings on a planet that mostly in the main, lots of them seem to get on. But there are, obviously there's conflicts and there's war, even just on a local level. It's just ego and power and just crappy stuff happening all the time. And so this notion of us all having a shared experience, in many ways we are, because we're all experiencing the world. But within that, look how differently people experience the same planet that they're living on. I mean, you're going to experience the world differently if you're in different countries and different climates, obviously. But even, like, I think about people in church. If you went into a church of whatever kind and you asked, say, 6 people next to each other on a pew what they thought God, or who they thought God was, or Jesus, they would all, there might be some similarities, but they would all sort of tell you the same, different things. And so I can't help thinking that we're meant to be born here to be individuals. And that's partly because there's something about having a human experience, and we do all learn and we do all grow physically, but also emotionally and mentally, and some spiritually. And we're doing that through our active experience of being on this planet. And if we didn't have people that rubbed up against us or annoyed us or were mean and cruel to us, or were proud of us, supported us, showed us charity and grace, kindness, then all these polar opposites, if you didn't have those, you wouldn't, if you didn't have good, then you wouldn't know what bad was, and vice versa. Alan Watts talks about this. He talks about the people up on the hill and the people down the hill in some place he lived in America. And the people up on the hill, they all have their, bohemian parties and this and that. No, there wasn't. I think they were the posh lot up on the top of the hill, and they're looking down on the bohemians at the bottom. And then the bohemians at the top are like, oh man, you lot up there, you're so stuffy, and oh. But actually they wouldn't know each other. They wouldn't know themselves without knowing the other and having them to bitch about and compare. So it's that sort of a classic thing. What I think is the thing here about the oneness, my thinking is, as I've been pondering this, is that so we're all here to live different experiences. We're all fractals, whether it's fractals of God or we're just these different personalities, which whatever your belief is. I doubt there are any atheists watching this, but you never know. But this thing of coming to oneness, I think, is despite the polarities that are teaching you the lessons, that you can find a common denominator. I mean, okay, so this is not for the atheist, but the common denominator would be God. Now, again, we have the struggles because you've got, no, this is my God and this is my God, and that my God's more true than yours, and I've got the truth and I hold the thing. And even within the Christian church, you've got the Catholics who right royally think that they're just above all others. They might not, some might not think that they think this, but their church is basically saying, mine is the truth and the way. And it's just like, I don't know. There's a lot of reasons why I would question that. But anyway, and some of them say it because they try to date their church back to Jesus. I'm not sure Jesus was trying to set up anything like the Roman Catholic Church with all the gold and all the this and that, and a pope that can sanction wars. And yeah, I'm not in, and all the things that I've had, I'm not entirely sure that that was Jesus's thing. And then you can say, oh, well, that's because humans are infallible and we are all dirty, crusty sinners, and even the popes and the bishops and this and that, we're all going to make these slip-ups. But some of theirs are quite monumental when you think what Jesus was actually teaching. So it's no wonder that there are atheists and there are people that just think, what the dickens, why would I join a church? It's a load of nonsense. It's a shame. That is a shame, because what I find on a local level, where in my experience, even so there's a 8:30 service and a 10:30 service. There's a guy that's quite nice. He comes to the contemplative prayer, seems like a reasonable guy, and he likes the 10:30 with all the bells and the whistles and the up and down with the Bible and the wafting of the incense, whereas I prefer the 8:30 because it's quiet and there's just a small group of us. I love singing, I love hymns, but I was raised on school assemblies with hymns, but I don't. That 8:30 in the morning is a bit of sanctuary. Now I'm serving, I don't quite get that. I have to serve the minister, doing the bread and the wine and everything. But again, I strongly feel that that's something that I find myself in that position. So I've been led to do that, called to do that, whichever way you want to say it. So that's just where I find myself at the minute. It wasn't something that I planned on doing. This is me just saying, oh, where am I supposed to go? Oh, I'm supposed to go here because I'm taking direction from something higher. So yeah, I think it's about us. It is about us. Yeah, if you're not attending a church or going to Buddhist meetings, SGI or Kadampa, or you're not, and you're not this thing of discipline. You're not, a yoga class just doesn't quite cut it. By engaging with a faith path, even if it's one that you don't stick with, like, there's quite often, there's people, they've been Buddhists or they were Hindus and then they moved to Islam and then they moved to Christianity, and, all different loops. And I used to think, crikey, why is that? How can you say, this is the God, this is my this is what I'm believing, and then actually you completely change? I think that's partly because there is so much interlinked, and the overarching thing is God. You can call him what you like and think what you like. Then you're getting into like, well, is God actually a man, not a man, some special bit? This is back down the splitting tree of life thing. But the oneness thing, I think, is us being able to find the way that actually we can all be those individuals, and say in the case of religions, you can all be of those faith paths and been going at the God thing in Godhead in different strands, but essentially there's a thread that connects us all, and it's having that humanity and that love, that you're just accepting of people. You don't all become some sort of homogenous thing, and you're still having these differences to learn, but you're being far more accepting and tolerant. And tolerant is used, that word is used now, but it's almost, I don't know, it's almost overused by politicians, so it makes people like, oh no, oh, they're on about tolerance again. But actually, yeah, it's aspiring to tolerance without effort, because it's actually a part of your being. It's not something you're trying to do. You just are tolerant because it's in you. You don't question it. It's because through a faith or through a spiritual practice, path of learning, and because not everybody goes to churches, but there are people that are, I would imagine, like myself, that are on a path of learning and exploring either texts of one faith path or of multiple, as well as people like me that are doing that, but also looking at the metaphysical, the astrological, all the different evidence that you can connect in now. That, back to the archaeologists having issues, it's everyone got so with science, it all became so defined, it all became so labelled and compartmentalised, and that was kind of fine for a time, because that needed to happen again. I think we're all in these cycles of things, and I think that even the murdering and the overtaking of countries and the oppressing people and all that sort of thing, I think it just kind of had to happen, because it was written, as it were, not in a Bible. I mean, if there's a book somewhere out in the heavens that's saying what's going to happen next, then it's coming through, so that, because then we, in the same way that we learn individually from experiences of people that scold us or are kind to us, the polarity things, then it's the same thing. It's just on a massive scale of civilizations and whole worlds and out the cosmos. I mean, again, we're not going to start going into the ET things, but if you're looking at certain texts like Sumerians, it was intergalactic, and Bhagavita, is it Bhagavita? I can never say that. But those texts, was it the Upanishads? I think it was the Bhagavita. Anyway, whoever wrote whatever, there's a lot of talk about galactic battles. And that comes back to Buddha's teachings of it's all suffering. Life is suffering. And so that's learning lessons about how to react to that suffering, or how to tread a path in life where kind of like suffering is minimized, partly because you're not bringing some suffering on yourself because of what you're giving out into the world and how you're speaking to people and acting with people, but also in the case of when, say, someone dies or an illness happens that has certain ramifications, that it's the way you approach those. People say, well, it's about mindset. Well, yeah, it is about mindset, and that's, the power of the mind is a wonderful thing. So in situations and in interactions that we have with others where we can feel offended or hurt or rejected or whatever the thing is, scorned by others, and so we can take that as offence and take it on as some sort of a trauma thing. And I think maybe we're missing our learnings there, because instead of going into some sort of massive decline or depression or holding on to this thing as a wound, which inevitably you will do when you're a child, which is why a lot of these things, psychologists and healers and people are saying it's spanning back from early childhood memories, this wound. But that's doing the work on yourself to shine light on that shadow area, to examine that wound and let those emotions come up and then deal with it, so that you can move on and be showing up in the world in a different way. That's personal growth as I understand it. So that is the doing the work on yourself. Again, I think it's being on a spiritual path that you are aware of these things and you're doing those. I think a lot of people, because I'm not talking about the people that just go to church and they think that they've done their bit for Jesus once every Sunday. I'm talking about the people that living in a way that you are constantly in that process and you're aware of it in your daily lives. I suppose that's what I'm meaning by living a life in prayer, because you're in connection. You know that there's something other, and you're in connection with that, be it that there's a part of you somewhere else, or that there is a God, or there is Jesus Christ and he's shining a light down on you and you're one of his children. However you want to use, we get so caught up in terminology, and I think as well, especially in church, that confuses people. So it's using those things that rub you right up the wrong way and really hurt you and stuff as the learning. I remember there's a brilliant. She's a nun. Jetsun Tenzin Palmo. I think she's from Bethnal Green, and she went off in the 70s, I think, over to India and Tibet or Nepal or wherever over there. She knew that she was to be a Buddhist nun, and she was the lady that was up in the cave for many years, meditating in a little wooden box in a little hut, all winds and weathers, living on very basic food and provision and minimal support, and to see if a woman, a female, could reach enlightenment. And because it was a very male-dominated thing, and she knew that there had been females before that had done this, and she wrote a book, In the Snow Cave, or Snow Cave. Anyway, brilliant lady. She's now she's the director of the Dongyu Gatsao Ling Nunnery in northern India, and she said once, she said, I think Rinpoche or somebody, a teacher of hers, had taught her that you don't, to get a smooth surface on wood, you don't get that unless you're rubbing it with rough sandpaper. And so these people that come along and they grate you, that's your sandpaper, rubbing you up. But in the end, it's going to smooth you out. So you have to, you should accept that. There's me saying shit again. You should. It's about accepting those experiences and those people, that the challenging people in your life are your blessings. They are your teachers, because if you're switched on and you have the awareness and you're treading the path and you're doing the work on yourself, instead of just sitting down and watching the telly and being absorbed in material world stuff or scrolling on eBay for stuff, you will be thinking about the things in your day and the experiences. And I'm not saying that I sit doing this all the time. I'm just saying that generally you're living that life of awareness. Again, I'm not living the life of a nun. I'm not sure that nuns would be sitting around doing that a lot of the time. Maybe they would. Maybe they do. It's part of the thing of reflecting. Anyway, I can't speak for the nuns. Any nuns of any kind. But you get the point. First signs of spring. Look, the leaves are just starting to pop out behind me in the second week of Lent. I've just been in and led the contemplative prayer session, and today we were contemplating the transfiguration of Jesus. Again, this light is coming up. His face shone, his garment shone, and you see in those old paintings the garments and the circle of light around the head, always coming back to this light. That if we came from source, well, we come from source of first cause, or source in a more spiritual sense, and it's always to do with that light, the photons. And then the guy that comes to prayer every week raised the point of, we'd started on a conversation before about Sundays, taking Sundays off from being commercialised. And it makes me think that, when we stopped that thing in England that shops could open on a Sunday, it used to be that nothing opened on a Sunday. It was a day of rest. It was a holy day. There was something sacred, and that just seemed to be the big sort of walloping nail in the coffin of things being less sacred. That there is no day now. That we're worked to the bone. We're made to work different shifts, day and night, every day of the week. There's no time carved out. And I really admire that in the Jewish faith. Admire, maybe that's not the right word. Maybe I'm a bit jealous. I just love in the fact of the Jewish faith, if those that observe it, the Friday, Friday evening, finish work, and through from then into all of the next day, that is their Sabbath. And they don't drive around and go to places, they don't go to work. There's lots of things they don't do. They've prepared food already. And it's just the fact that it's marked out as a sacred time, as a holy time, and family time. And I can't remember who, there's a chap that said that what you do on the day of on the Sabbath day, whether you have that as a Saturday or a Sunday, it should be things that bring you joy. So I mean, if that is doing work on your house and it brings you absolute joy, then great, I suppose. I quite often on Sunday do cooking, and I like that time. It's quite a meditative time, but I suppose it's kind of still chores, but it's quite nice. So yeah, how different would our lives be if we always carved out that bit of time for one day that is sacred, that is holy, that is just time for us. And really that time in connection of God, as in, thinking about some bigger stuff than just taking a renewal of yourself and thinking about the bigger stuff in life. Making one part of the week significant, to spend time living in prayer and all the forms that can take. Just a time to realise your humanity as much as your spirit, your soul core. I googled the Venus rose and I nearly got caught out. Embedded in the blog was a YouTube link. Nearly!